This is Marriage on the Half Shell, Raw and Exposed. So we titled tonight's episode The Great Compromise, kind of taking a little hint from history there. We listened to a YouTube video last week that we thought was really interesting by Mark Manson, who wrote The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. I won't say the word.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is a book you read. I didn't read that book.
Right.
So I guess you listen to him on YouTube from time to time.
Yeah, and you can find him on YouTube.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So he talked about the idea of compromise in a relationship. So we thought we would talk about that, kind of define it the way he did, which we thought was was a wise way to define it. It's not what most people think it is. Like when most people think compromise, I think they think one party is going to give up a whole bunch of stuff and the other party is going to gain a whole bunch of stuff. And that's not really what we're going to talk about. It's not the way compromise is supposed to work. Right?
Not right. Not in a relationship.
Yeah. So he described it as it isn't trying to make everyone happy. Compromise is making sure no one is miserable.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of expand on that idea a little bit. So what does that look like in your day-to-day or in your relationships?
Yeah.
You know, between yourselves, between you and your kids, or, you know, you and your family. What does that look like? So good compromise is about mitigating misery. It's more about mitigating misery than making everyone happy, because you can't do that.
It's impossible to make everyone
yes,
happy.
You are not going to make everyone happy. That's not going to happen. So relative happiness means you're no longer miserable. Right?
Something like that.
Yeah. Something like that. So, you know, and I'm going to touch on this again. We've touched on it several times now about chasing happiness.
Right.
If that's why you get into a relationship, if that is what you continue to do after you're in a relationship, you're going to make your spouse and yourself miserable. It's not going to work. Right. Chasing happiness never ends in happiness.
Right. And we've talked about this before,
yes.
Where you have to do different things and happiness comes along. But if you chase happiness itself, you're not going to get it.
No, you're not.
Okay.
No. You'll get a series of dopamine hits, and then that will drop off. And then, what did you call it? The tingles?
The tingles. Yeah. There's another guy out there. I won't. It's just his word. But we've talked about, you know, it's kind of like in the beginning of a relationship. I don't want to go too far into it because it's.
Yeah.
But, you know, the honeymoon phase, you could call it that, but where some people who are chasing happiness in a relationship don't understand how relationships work. And if you were going to stay with someone long term, the first year to 18 months, maybe you have this honeymoon phase and then it drops off and
right.
You're supposed to bond together and all of that. And I think we've talked about that before too.
Right. Yeah, I think we have.
But some people who think, oh, I'm not happy, and they're looking, this is another whole thing, they're looking, that maybe we could talk about it another time, but they're looking for something external to make them happy.
Right.
And you can't, that's impossible, you can't do that. So they chase a different they're with someone for a year to 18 months, and now they want the tingles again because they think something's wrong. So they start chasing another person.
Yeah.
Right. And they end up cheating or breaking up and then looking for someone else or whatever because they're looking for the tingles.
Yeah.
And they just ruin themselves and their relationships.
Right.
Okay. But enough of that.
Yeah. So, 3 things we are not talking about with compromise: your values, family, if that is important to you, and your priorities as far as, you know, pursuing family, career, things like that.
Right.
That's not, those three things need to be worked out early on in the relationship. And if you can't work those three things out, then don't have a relationship with that person.
Yeah.
Don't compromise your values. Priorities can be shifted, like
And you can make
that can be
minor things,
Yes.
minor changes. But if there's, it's almost like you want to be in sync or overlap.
yes.
I should say values, you should really be in sync.
Yeah.
Tightly.
Yeah.
Priorities, be in sync, but they should overlap. You can have different priorities as long as it doesn't, as you discuss, it doesn't prevent someone, your spouse or your fiance or whatever, from totally giving up something that's really important.
Right. Right.
Okay.
And then family, you don't want to be in a relationship with someone who demands to be prioritized over your family if you're close to your family and that's important to you.
Well,
You want
we
someone-
have to be careful how we say that because,
Okay.
I mean, when you create, especially if you're dating and looking to get married, that sort of thing, you're
Right.
going to be creating your own family.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
They will be prioritized over your family.
They will, but what I'm saying is when you start dating someone and they demand that you spend less time with your parents, or you know what I mean, like
It's like someone pulling you away from your friends.
Yes.
And this is a weird, it's like a, I don't know, it's like whether they try to isolate you,
Mhm.
and that's just a, how can I can't-
Toxic?
toxic situation. I hate using that word,
Yeah.
but it's a unmanageable situation.
Yeah.
And if that's starting to happen, you gotta, I think people stay in those situations because they have the tingles and maybe they don't see it happening, or they're being gaslit
yeah,
where the other person is altering their perception of their reality,
Right.
that sort of thing. So you just got to be aware. That's not what we're talking about.
no,
Right. But when you say keep family at the right priority, if you're being, and it's also friends, if you're being isolated
mm-hmm.
by this person that you're dating, then there's a serious issue there that you need to look at
Yeah,
before you go any further in the relationship
Yeah.
or commit.
right. So let's see. We're just gonna, I think we're gonna hit, what we're gonna do here is hit practical applications, because that's kind of how we set this up.
It's how we understand best. What do you mean by I'm just mitigating misery? I don't want I don't want my partner to be miserable.
Right.
Right. And as I said before, it's like happiness is something that's inside. Only you can make yourself happy. And that's
Yeah.
a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
I think. But just let that stand as a principle right now.
Right.
Only you can do it. They can't do it. They might enhance it, fluff it up a little,
Right.
make it better or whatever, but it's about who you are inside. And if you don't have control of that, if you don't know who you are, if you don't have a good sense of your situation, who you are, and so on, and what you want to do, and all that, and then you're not gonna be happy.
Mm.
And if you look for someone outside to make you happy, it's just not going to happen. I mean,
Right.
yes, you're going to get the tingles, right? But that's not real happiness.
Right.
Okay.
So, so we've been married a long time, so we've obviously had to compromise
Sure.
quite a few times.
Yep.
In our relationship. So, early on, let's see. So early on,
Well, let's do this
okay,
and then give all the examples.
okay.
Right.
So,
So, what does it say?
it says someone gave up 10% of their happiness but gained 50% happiness.
Okay, so let's talk about that.
Okay, so that's kind of the ratio that Mark Manson was discussing when he.
And it could be 10, 20, you know, but it's not a big amount. You don't give up 50%. We're going to clarify this, but you don't give up 50% of your happiness for the other person.
Yeah.
Right? And then they give up 50% of their happiness for you, and then you're both 50% happy. You know, that's not how it works.
Right.
Right. The way he described it was you give up, say you have something that you need to work out. And he said, so we talked about what should be in sync and so on. He says most things that you compromise on are logistics.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So like, where are we going to live, or that sort of thing. And so he said, if you have to make this decision, like say, where are you going to live, and who's going to work, and who's going to do this or that chore or whatever.
Yeah.
What you should do is, each of you look to give up maybe 10 to 20% of your happiness, right, related to that thing. And we'll give an example.
Yeah.
So that the other person isn't miserable, and what happens is, because of that, you gain back more relationship happiness.
Yeah.
Which is going to be greater than the 20% you gave up. So he talked about, I'll give his example and then we can talk about us.
Okay.
But his example was, say, you know, he said, I'm a messy person, right? But my wife is more neat. And he said, I'll spend 15 minutes straightening up, right? And that's, you know, I normally wouldn't do that by myself, but 15 minutes isn't a big deal. It's about 10% happiness, right?
Yeah.
But the fact that I've done that makes her feel much better, right? Things are straightened up, even if he only spent 15 minutes. So he gains back this greater relationship happiness with his wife.
Yeah.
Right? And he said, if I had to give up an hour to straighten up, to really clean, he says, you start to get diminishing returns. And that's why it's only 10 to 20%.
Yeah.
Because once you give up more, you really get diminishing returns in how happy the other person is, and because of your sacrifice, if you will.
Yeah.
And you know, you've already got this increase in relationship happiness, so you're not going to get much more.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, you show the other person that you care enough to spend the 15 minutes to do it.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so that's his example.
Right.
But let's talk about some of our examples.
Well, early on in our marriage, because obviously we started having children immediately.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, you know, early on, it just kind of fell out this way. Once I stopped nursing, you took over bedtime.
For the kids, yeah.
For the kids, right? And so that was a compromise that we made kind of without even discussing it. You just kind of, and also when it was time to night wean them, so I wasn't getting up in the night and nursing them, you just took that over. You were like, nope, you're not getting up anymore. You know, I'll take care of this because you got to sleep. I can get back to sleep better than you can because I would nurse and then I'd be up for an hour, you know, or whatever.
Right.
So it just,
you'd be stuck up and then losing a lot of sleep.
Yeah, more sleep.
When the kids, that particular kid really should be past the time where they're nursing at night. It's more for just a
habit or a comfort
thing.
Yeah.
You know, so I said, you know, you don't worry about it. I'll start getting up.
Right.
And I can spend 15 minutes
Yeah.
or a half an hour rocking the baby,
Yeah.
and they're comforted, but then, they learn that they're not going to get fed, but
Mm-hmm.
they're still comforted, and they go back to sleep, and I get back in bed and go back to sleep pretty
Yeah.
quick. So I've sacrificed 15 minutes to half an hour
Yeah.
of sleep, which is not that big of a deal, for what it gains you.
Yeah. I mean, I would get the sleep I needed to get up the next morning and take care of a house full of children. I mean, that's what it
wouldn't-
was.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be this schizophrenic.
It was still that
tired.
sometimes. Sometimes. But I mean, the fact that you also took over bedtime was big because I was a stay-at-home mom, and by the time we had like 4, 5, and 6, I'm homeschooling.
Yeah.
So it's not just that
Well, you're with them all the time.
yeah,
anyway.
they were with me 24/7. I mean,
Well, except for sleep.
yeah, most of the time, But I spent 12 years of that time pregnant, nursing, or somewhere in between. So there's already a lot of lost sleep.
Yeah.
But I'm also homeschooling them in the midst of all this. So basically, when you got home from work, we would have dinner, and then the kids were yours for the rest of the evening. We might do something with them after dinner, but then when bedtime rolled around, I could go take a bath. I could go get a coffee somewhere. I could go sit and read a book.
Right.
I could go and be a human being by myself.
Right.
And you got time to bond with the kids. The kids have great memories of you reading them all these books and spending time with them and falling asleep in their bed with them because you were tired. Just that kind of thing. They remember all that stuff. So that was a compromise that we made early on, without even really discussing. We didn't even really
just
talk
worked
about
out.
it. It just
Right.
it did work out that way.
But we could have discussed it.
Right.
But the point is that, I gave up an hour or two. So in that case, it's an hour or two.
Yeah.
But not only did I get back your sanity,
Yeah.
and it made our relationship better.
Yeah.
But I got to spend time with
Yeah.
the kids. And
Yeah.
they liked when I read to them or whatever.
Yeah, they did.
And they always liked us when we did family things where it was all
Sure.
of us, but they really liked that.
Yeah.
And it was great. And
Yeah.
So double relationship benefit, right?
Okay. So, another one, and I've discussed this so many times, but keeping the kitchen clean.
Yeah, I was gonna.
That one. So that one's that's always been a sticky thing for me anyway. Like my children knew that if mom came home and the kitchen was a mess, that mom was not gonna be happy.
Yeah.
I would turn into that schizophrenic, nasty person if I came home and they wrecked my kitchen and didn't clean it up. So, I made a rule early on. I don't care what you do in my kitchen. You can go in there, you can bake, cook, whatever you want to do. Clean up after yourself. I don't want to see what you did. Whatever it is.
And that was it gave you a sense of control.
Yeah.
I think like things are always out of control, but at least a nice, a clean kitchen gave you a sense of control, and the rest of the house could be chaos.
It was most of the time
because it always was.
Yeah.
The kids drag stuff out,
Yeah.
and that's the way it is. Kids are kids. But we kept the kitchen. If we could keep the kitchen clean, right? So you talk about that, and what I'll do. I mean,
now we're basically empty nesters. It's us and our older son, but he,
I
he's
still
more
do
on
it.
his own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I still do is, if there's dishes in the sink, I'll put in the dishwasher.
Yeah.
And it takes me during my work, since I work at home, which is great. I have to get up every now and then anyway, so I can walk into the kitchen and spend less than 5 minutes, less than 2 minutes, just cleaning up what's there.
Yeah.
And it just kind of keeps the kitchen neat.
Yeah.
I don't have to scrub the floor or
I do all that.
you do. But I'm talking about the clutter and the
Right.
dishes. And so I sacrifice 2 or 3 minutes a couple times a day to keep the dishes done, and it's not it's not something where I sacrifice my leadership or, whatever.
Yeah.
So that's the compromise about, who does what chores around the house.
I mean, I still do most of the dishes, but it is nice to come home from the gym after I've been there for 3 hours
Yeah.
or 4 hours or whatever it is, and not come home to 2 sinks full of dirty dishes that, well, now that's the first thing I've got to do before I do anything else.
Yeah, it's it's a compulsion, I
Yeah.
think, a little bit.
It is.
Where you feel like I've got to get this under control.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it probably is.
Yeah.
I know. Well, okay. Here's a funny little anecdote. I know that when things get out of control in the rest of my life, I know that that's happening when I have dreams about sinks full of dirty dishes.
Yeah.
And there was one dream. It was crazy. Crazy. I don't even remember what we were going through at the time. But I was in a big, like, competition type kitchen where there were multiple kitchens all set up.
Oh yeah,
right?
like a baking championship.
Like
thing.
like that. And so it's like, I don't know, 60 little kitchens all set up in this big auditorium. It's a
Okay.
dream, it's going to be exaggerated. Every single sink was full of dishes. And I went to one and I just opened the dishwasher, and the dishwasher was full of dirty dishes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like in every single little kitchen was like that. So I woke up and I was like, okay, I need to evaluate something. Something's not right.
Something's out of control.
What is that? What is out of my control right now that's making me have that kind of a crazy dream?
Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, I am a little compulsive about my kitchen. Just a little.
Okay, just a little.
I had 6 kids. I have to be in control of something.
Right.
I wasn't in control of much else.
That's true.
So, we try to right now, like, I could very easily fill up every Saturday with stuff for us to do because we don't have kids anymore. We could take some day trips and we could go here and go there, and go to this park and do this and do that. I try not to do that because I know that Saturday, you work the rest of the week. So it's not like you can get out in the yard and cut the grass in the middle of the week, or, putter around and repair things and do yard stuff or car stuff, because you do a lot of maintenance on the car. So I try to keep Saturdays open. If somebody comes to me and says, hey, we're going to do this thing this Saturday, I'll get back to you. I'm not going to say yes right away. I'm going to evaluate how many other Saturdays have we taken up with stuff. And B, I'm going to talk to you first. I'm not going to just automatically say yes.
Yeah.
So, I might have to give up the occasional social event.
Maybe. I mean, I'm generally open
Sure.
to things in the evening.
Right. I mean, as long as I don't go too late, because we're too
As long
old
as
to
you
stay
don't
out,
Yeah, I don't want to stay out. Nobody wants to.
Hey, we're going to another bar, and it's 10. No.
Well, you can have
Yeah,
fun, right?
I'll have fun. I'm not doing
I'm
that.
not going to destroy myself. Yeah, and but if it's like a competition
Sure.
during the day,
I try not to, or I'll try to find
go
somebody else to go
yourself.
with
Yeah,
me
you-
or
yeah.
something, Well, another one is concerts.
Yeah.
I like live music. I like going to see concerts. It's not really your favorite thing.
no.
There
But
are certain that
I'm-
we've had
I'm okay
fun.
with some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if one is coming up and the tickets aren't $350 a piece like they are most of the time now, I will and I've actually done this for years. I'll find a concert buddy.
Yeah.
I used to go with my brother and some of his friends. So it would be me and a bunch of guys. And they
Yeah,
would
but
all
it's your
call me
brother.
mom or sis,
Yeah, they call you mom.
And then last year there was a concert that I really wanted to go to, and the tickets were reasonable, but you didn't particularly want to go, so I took my son-in-law.
Yeah.
And I made a fan. He hadn't really heard a lot of this band's music, but he knew the genre and he knew that he would like it. So I was like, "Yeah, come on, we'll go, you and me." So we went, and he came home and listened to all their stuff. So it's like I can always find somebody. usually find
I mean,
somebody.
You got a couple girlfriends too.
Yeah.
That go out.
Yeah.
You know, whatever.
Yeah. So, that would be another. But there are times when I'm like, no, I want you with me. I want you to go with me.
Mm-hmm.
Like we took my parents to see the Doobie Brothers.
Oh yeah.
And that was great.
That was cool.
And then we're going to go see Dr. Peterson here in a couple of months, and I'm more or less dragging you to that because I want you to go and I want you to hear him speak, right? But
so, one day a year.
I'll sacrifice an evening, You're going to give up 10% happiness.
I'll probably get something out of it.
Oh, you will get something out of it. There's no question about that.
All right.
Okay, so I'm just looking here. This was a funny one too. So, after I had child number 6, by the time Christmas rolled around, he was 5 months old, I guess. 5 or 6 months old. He was still nursing. And not interested in taking a bottle or eating or anything like that. So, it was what it was.
Yeah.
And I had 3 in diapers at that point because my oldest son was like, whatever. I don't care about diapers.
Yeah.
And my youngest daughter was moving in that direction, but hadn't made it yet. And then I have a baby. So I got 3 kids in diapers. I've got the 3 older girls. And I started talking to you about, I need to go Christmas shopping. And you were like, no, you're not doing that. You are not putting all 6 children in the van. What are you going to do? Take them to the mall and push stroller around with the backpack on? And no, you're not doing any of that. And this was prior to Amazon. You buy the thing and you ship it to them, and we did that. But I picked all these gifts and I had them shipped from all these different. So we paid all that shipping to have all this stuff shipped to nieces and nephews and
anyway,
but anyway, so you stepped in and made me 90% happy, not not 50% happy, because dragging all 6 kids around, unless we were going to a park and I was going to let them run around for a couple of hours, it wasn't pleasant. It was not easy at all.
It's not not that the kids were unpleasant.
It's just chaos.
Chaos, trying to keep 6 kids safe out in the world.
Oh, you remember the, shortly after my daughter met my now son-in-law of almost 16 years, he's got two younger brothers.
3.
Okay, 3, but there were only 2 that went with us to the aquarium.
Okay, yeah.
So we made this family trip to the aquarium in Baltimore. And if you've never been to the Baltimore Aquarium, it's ginormous. So we decided to take all the kids. We took our 6 kids, plus my son-in-law, plus his 2 younger brothers who are the same age as our younger kids.
Yeah.
And we did not anticipate how crowded it was going to be. And so you and I and my daughter and son-in-law spent all day going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, just counting heads, because they got in there and they went and they just dispersed, and we were like, holy, what the, oh no, there's people everywhere, oh no. Anyway, another anecdote.
That has nothing to do with
no, it has nothing. I just thought it was funny. I just had a funny memory. Yeah. So
let's see. Well, we talk about the big one.
Yes, that is the biggest, and so this is probably the biggest compromise we've made in our marriage. Was moving to where we are now. We had been in Maryland for, well, you've lived there your whole life, but our entire married life up to that point. So 20 plus years.
25
something like
plus years.
Yeah. It was
more
than
long. 25, definitely.
Our kids had grown up there. They knew the area, if we sent them out somewhere, they knew where they were going. It was home to them, and we had collectively discussed multiple times all moving south together, So, and I think we've told the story before, but it just kind of was dropped in our lap kind of all at once.
Yeah. So we had talked about Virginia, we talked about North Carolina, and I think we were leaning toward North Carolina because we'd vacation there, be close to the beach,
right?
That sort of thing, and I could work from anywhere.
Right. You had been telecommuting for quite a while.
I had been telecommuting, so I could really work from anywhere as long as I had internet. So, and then your parents went on vacation in Florida and then came back up, stopped in South Carolina, and bought a house. Bing. Like, oh my goodness. All right. So we said, okay.
Yeah.
And it was also kind of like the impetus, the kick in the butt we needed to actually do it.
Because we'd been renting for a long time.
Yeah. So we were renting so we could just pick up and go
move
whenever we wanted. Yeah. And so we did that. We told our oldest was married.
Yeah.
And they
had a baby.
They had their first kid.
Yeah.
But we told them, hey, we'd been talking to them, so we said we're going to go.
Yeah.
And they started looking and moved basically a month after us.
Yes.
And
like he got a job right away. Like Providence stepped in, and
it all worked out
we
great.
were
And we brought our second also was married, but they were living in California.
They were living in California
at that time.
Yeah.
So anyway, we brought 4 of them down with us.
Yeah.
And they're all still here.
Yeah.
And
I had finished out homeschooling.
Yep.
The rest of them. And I mean, here's another providential thing. We moved down here and, trying to get the youngest 3 through high school, and discovered that where we live, they offer a trade school for free. If you live during high school, if you live in the area where we were.
Right.
And my daughter had already been making noises about, I want to go to beauty school. Yeah. So we were just like, okay, we'll need to look into options for that for after you graduate then. And, we'll do all that. And then, no, we didn't have to pay for it. She got it for free. We stuck my youngest son in trade school as well. And
he got that for free.
He got it for free. I mean, it was kind of amazing. And then as soon as they graduated, we found where we are now.
Jobs. Yeah. Anyway.
So now we're 35-ish minutes from my parents. Right. Maybe about that far from the kids and my grandkids. And we see them pretty frequently, at least once or twice a week.
Yeah.
Once or twice a week at least. So my kid, 2 of my kids found their spouses down here.
Yep.
And are now married and establishing their own families. So, but the compromise came in, well, it was more on my part.
So this was where you gave
20%.
Definitely wasn't 10%.
No, it wasn't. Because I don't like hot weather. I'm not a hot weather person. And it's hotter here than it was in Maryland.
Yeah.
Down here, we really don't get 4 seasons.
Right.
We get 2.5 or something like that. It's like,
Yeah.
we get a couple of weeks of the kind of weather that I like, which is cold. I like it cold.
Yeah. But there's no snow here.
No.
Where we live.
It snowed one time. 2018 it snowed.
Yeah.
And we got 8 inches, and it shut down the entire area for a week. Nobody could move.
Nobody knew.
It was it was crazy. I mean, they don't have any snow equipment down here either, so they couldn't clean it out. Anyway, no, what we get is the flooding.
Yeah.
If it's spring, it's like that Evan Almighty.
Mm-hmm.
That scene in Evan Almighty where they're standing out there and it's like it starts raining and everybody goes, "Is that it?" And then the dam breaks and the whole thing. That's where we are. That's where we are.
Close to Charleston.
Yeah, we're close to Charleston.
The sacrifice for you was not having snow, not having cold weather.
My fall weather
and
then
fall
all that.
Having to deal with the hot summer.
Yeah.
Right. So it was another one of those double things because I got to live where, we'd been in Maryland for 25 years.
Yeah.
Well, me all my life.
Yeah.
So now I get to be in South Carolina.
Right. You're outside when it's 100 degrees
Yeah.
doing yard work, and I'm standing inside going, how far down can I crank the AC before he notices?
Right. See, yeah. So, but what you gained, even though you
Yeah,
gave up,
I
the
gained a lot.
20%,
Yeah.
you gained.
Well, I just said a couple of things.
Right, but you got to be with your parents. You are close to your parents.
Yeah.
And so part of that deal, I guess we didn't make a deal, but part of what we do is I'll sacrifice 20% and take you to the mountains once a year.
Yeah.
In the winter, and deal with putting them chains on the truck and all of that, and we go rent a place for a few days, and you get to play in the snow.
I can make snow angels and snowmen, and
and we can sit on the deck when it's really cold.
Yeah.
I'm shivering, or we can go tubing, which is great.
Yeah.
So we have, so it's okay. So I'm all right. I mean, when I was younger, I could handle snow skiing and sledding and all that, but I don't like it that much now. Tubing's cool.
Right.
So I'm good with that. Anyway, so I sacrifice that so that you get to experience the cold. Anyway.
So yeah, I mean,
that's
but
the big one for us.
Yes, I sacrificed my cold weather that I like, but all of the things that we gained, we also now have property with land and a guest house. We never could have done that in Maryland. There's absolutely no way we could have done that in Maryland.
True.
For what we are paying down here. Like I said, 2 of my kids met their spouses. They live relatively close by. We're close to the beach.
Yeah.
So, several times every summer we'll just kind of drop everything and go to the beach, or
in Maryland it was 3 hours.
It was 3 hours away. Well, now the mountains are 3 hours away.
Yeah, now the mountains are 3 hours away. But, it's okay.
Yeah. So, and I've also gained like a community, a gym community that
It was much better,
yeah,
I think, than what you had in Maryland.
I didn't really have.
There wasn't a community.
No, not
you had
really.
Some classes.
Yeah, and I knew some people in my classes, but definitely.
We couldn't have predicted all this, but it did work out.
Right,
a lot of benefits.
Right. Yeah, I got my coaching certificate, and I've been coaching for
5 years.
Well, almost 5 years, I guess.
Yeah,
It'll be 5 years this year. Yeah.
Or
yeah. I'll be coaching. It'll be almost 5 years.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, that's the other thing about when you make that compromise. After you make the compromise, start looking around for things to be grateful for, right?
You should do that anyway.
Well, you should always do that anyway, but I'm talking about specifically correlated to this. Like, you gave up your evenings to be with the kids, but now you have a great relationship with your kids.
Yep.
And they have all these great memories of you reading them, all these great books, right?
Yeah.
And,
I went through a lot of good books.
Yeah, you did. That's what I'm saying.
You were about to say something. Sorry.
Well, like, I can deal with the hot weather, but what did I gain? I gained all of these things that we just talked about.
Yeah.
My grandkids, I'm spending a lot of time with them. I get to help homeschool them.
Yeah.
I get to participate in that.
Yeah.
And I get to bond with them and have a good relationship with them.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we had, we just had a bonfire last night with some of them.
Yeah.
And, we had the means to do that, the ability to do that. Where, in Maryland, I don't know if we would have been able to buy land with a big enough backyard to have a big bonfire and a zip line and all that stuff. I don't think we would have been able to do it just because of housing prices. So anyway, so there's a lot of benefits, but the point is compromises. They have the extra benefits sometimes, and especially if you look for them. So I don't know. I think those are all our examples anyway.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know I just mentioned the gratitude, meaning if you are compromising, start looking for the things that you can be grateful for, that you made that sacrifice, but also always be aware of when your spouse has made a compromise for you,
Right.
and then recognize it.
Definitely. And express gratitude
Yeah.
for it.
That's yeah.
You know. Yeah, gratitude is, I mean, different subject, but it's not just I'm thankful for this, which you should do.
Yes.
Right. And even write it down.
Yeah.
But you should also express it. I think we thank each other for a lot of things every day.
It changes your mindset
Yeah.
from always looking for negative things to you kind of start to overlook the
You
small
overlook
little negative things.
Because most negative things are small. Now we're totally off the subject, but
Yeah, I mean, we could do a whole. I don't know if we've already done that,
I
covered
don't
that or
know.
not. I have
think
no
we
idea.
did,
Probably.
but yeah.
But
Just
okay,
a
so
reminder, you know.
so just in general, compromise is not I'm giving up all of what I was going to do today to do this thing for you. That will happen sometimes.
Every now and then.
Every now
it's
and
okay.
then, every now and then that will happen. But compromise is more of a day-to-day thing, and you just have to have open and honest discussions, make sure that everything is on the table.
Yeah.
And make sure that A, you're not sacrificing too much or too little.
Or
and-
too little. Yeah.
Yeah. And B, make sure that your partner is getting, what they need out of this deal. Right?
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about. And I think that when people think about compromise in marriage, they think, well, I have to give up everything.
Right.
And you don't.
You don't have to give up
No.
everything. And if you've talked things out before you get married, the big things, you have to work those out before you make the commitment. And
Yeah.
sometimes you choose not to make the commitment to marriage because you don't want to give up the big thing.
Yeah.
That you want to do.
Yeah.
Right. Because it just wouldn't work in your life. That's what you really want to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes the compromise might be like, I don't know, I'm pulling this out of my butt, right? Say you want to travel the world, for a year before you settle down.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I'll just, this is Mark Manson again.
Yeah.
His thing, he liked to go to different countries. He would go to different countries and live there for a few months to 6 months. And then he'd move on to a different country. And he met his wife in
Brazil.
In
He's
Brazil.
in Brazil.
And she would start traveling with him, but she was like, I after a few weeks, I can't handle this.
Yeah.
I don't know. So what they did was they made a compromise where, one, they would commit to staying someplace for 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
right? They would go where there were expats,
Yeah.
you know,
Where she could have a community
so
and
she could have
people
a community, and she could travel back to Brazil on, somewhat, I guess it was a somewhat of a regular basis, so she could see
see
her
your family. Yeah.
right? And they did that, and it worked out. It
Yeah.
was like a logistical compromise
Yeah.
where they could do it, and he could keep traveling and so on, because he was traveling and running some kind of business, and
Yeah.
he could do it remotely, so he didn't have any problem with going anywhere. And I think now they basically settled down, but
Yeah.
that's what he said. This is what I want to do, before. This is the time to do it. Otherwise, I won't be able to do it.
Right.
And so they actually seriously talked about, should we break up?
Mm-hmm.
Because they were so different in what they wanted just for that period of, I don't know, what was it, 2 years or so.
Yeah, something like that.
But they talked it through and made the compromises that they needed, and it worked out. And now they've been married for a while. So,
yeah.
And of course, they've stayed in one place. So anyway, that's their example. Another one of theirs.
Mm-hmm. But he said, I gave up 20%
right.
of my happiness. You know, that was but she was this much less miserable. But I gained like 70% relationship happiness out of it, you know.
Exactly.
So that's what's on the other end of that, you know, compromise. Right. You know, you give up that little bit, but as long as you've cultivated this relationship where you're both capable of expressing gratitude, you know, for what's been done,
right,
you gain so much more out of just giving up that little bit. Yeah,
exactly. And I also think that a lot of times when we have this propensity as humans to when we have to give up something, even if it's a small thing, we just see it in our mind as bigger than it is.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So you really have to calm down and think it through. Like, what am I really giving up?
Yeah.
What am I comfortable giving up that would help them not be miserable, and it would make our relationship pay dividends.
Yeah.
Right. So much more than what I'm actually giving up.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So anyway, I think that's enough examples.
Yeah.
So we're done.
I think we've covered it. I think we covered it. Yeah.
All right.
Anyone who's listening, you have our contact information. That'll be in we'll link it below. If you have any questions about this, or if you want to talk to, have a back and forth with us one-on-one about something you're thinking about compromising on or whatever, we're willing to help you out with that if we possibly can.
Or if you have one where you've made the compromise.
Sure, we'd love to hear stories. We'd love to hear stories. So.
All right.
Okay. Well, have a good evening, y'all.
This has been
Marriage on the Half Shell.